Paul Chapman.
Hi, this is John Bingaman, the governor's office.
Hey, Gary, this is Lee Rossman, too.
Yeah, we've had all sorts of people join in, and so Governor gets to be in.
Could everyone please put your phones on mute? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's the governor. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. Good morning.
Good morning. Now
Carrie?
that we have nearly everyone. Oh, there's some more good mornings. I want to thank everyone on such a quick turnaround. Oh, there's someone.
Hello, this is Marcia Beard from RVK, and Matthias is joining as well.
Oh, terrific. Good morning.
Good morning.
Carrie, do we want to go ahead and take a roll call and officially open the meeting and get the agenda approved, and let's get rocking and rolling, shall we?
Oh, sounds good. I did hear from Treasurer Eichenberg this morning that he had a previous engagement and cannot join the call.
Understood. Okay.
So, Governor Lujan Grisham,
Present.
Commissioner Garcia Richard,
I'm here.
Secretary Padilla Jackson,
Present.
Peter Frank,
I'm here.
Linda Eisen,
Present.
Tim Jennings,
Here, of course.
Harold Lavender,
Present.
Lee Rawson,
Present.
Michael Messina,
Present.
and Nicholas Hayes.
Present.
And then for State Investment Council staff, Steve Moise,
Present.
Vince Smith,
Good morning, I'm here.
Evan Land,
Hello.
Brent Stipp,
I'm here.
Charlie Woolman,
Present.
David Lee,
Present.
Paul Chapman.
Yeah.
Chris Cassidy,
Good morning.
Mikhail Kuznetsov,
Present.
Bruce Brown,
Here.
Darla Bennett. Maybe I should ask, are there any other investment staff members on the phone?
Clayton Camper just dialed in.
Thank you, Clayton.
Clayton Cleek is here.
Thank you. And from Sun Mountain, who do we have on the line?
Brian Burke is present.
Thank you. And
Lee Rand is present.
Lee Rand, thank you. And from RVK, we have Marcia Beard and Matthias Bauer.
Correct.
Is there anyone else on the line who I have not identified?
John Bingaman, governor's office.
Thank you, John. I'm sorry. I
He's
believe that.
stealthy. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being available this morning. Why don't we then go to approval of the agenda, which is item B on opening matters. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Harold, so move.
Second.
This is Linda.
Wonderful, thank you. And since people are listening and it's hard to see and do all the work, we really only have one matter on the agenda. We've included closing matters, which are old or new business. If there's anything under that section, we'll do our next State Investment Council meeting, and of course we'll have public comment and adjournment. So really it's the New Mexico Recovery Fund today. So I appreciate that. Any other discussion about the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Hearing none, the motion carries. The agenda is approved as presented. And the next item on the agenda is our action item for this morning. It is the New Mexico Recovery Fund. I want to thank the staff and Director Moise at the State Investment Council for really hearing our issues in the last meeting related to this fund and to doing the heavy lifting to really work it. Sun Mountain Capital, I want to thank you for really making sure that this is our public service efforts to do as much as we can to offset the incredible financial impact and devastation to so many New Mexico businesses. And I'm grateful for the work that you have accomplished in the last couple of weeks, and happy to have you walk us through some of the efforts and changes, or ideas, I'm sorry. Steve?
Good morning, Governor, and thank you for those comments. As all of you recall, the council approved the creation of this recovery fund at its last meeting on March 24th. You asked staff to consider guideline suggestions from our council members and to work with Sun Mountain to create terms for the operation of the fund. Thanks to several of you for your ideas. The recommended guidelines are contained in the investment memorandum and program details contained in today's meeting materials. Sun Mountain representatives, as you just heard from Brian and Lee, are on the call this morning to further explain the details and to respond to any questions. Chris Cassidy, our New Mexico portfolio manager, who is serving as our staff's point person for this fund, is also on the call. I'll summarize a few key topics which our members and others have raised, and we'll ask Brian Burke to explain how each of these topics and a few others have been addressed in the materials you received. I thought it would be helpful to you to go down this list, sure that we have covered the things that you thought were important. And I'll do them topically without explaining them. First, the purpose of the fund. The fund size, the loan size, interest rates, other loan terms. When will the fund be operational? How much of the loan proceeds must be expended in New Mexico? Can the fund be restructured if not serving as it was intended? What are the roles of other federal and state programs and traditional lenders? What New Mexico businesses are eligible, and must they be based in New Mexico? What's the minimum number of employees the business must have? What are retention requirements, and must the employees be in New Mexico? What are the economic reporting requirements? For example, jobs retained and created, New Mexico payroll, and New Mexico purchases. What conflict of interest provisions will apply? How can commercial banks and credit unions be involved? How is Sun Mountain to be compensated, and how are expenses controlled and paid? How will the oversight committee be organized? And what is its role? And Governor, if I may, on that topic, ask that the council consider this item at its upcoming April 28th regular meeting, and that council members send any recommended committee members to carry. And may I also suggest that it might be well to have our Council Investment Committee chair serve on that committee, as well as a few people with particular skill sets, such as an attorney, a CPA, a banker, and an investor. That would give 5 people the opportunity to serve, and that might be a good number. Thank you for at least letting me make those suggestions.
So if I might, for the council, Steve, just ask a quick question. So you're assuming, and I hope that's going to be the case, given the vote for last week, that as you make these, we discuss the changes to the fund and vote to approve, you're requesting at our next meeting, which is Tuesday, April 28th, that we have a committee appointed to help operate the fund. Did I hear that right? With Sun Mountain? I didn't understand.
That's correct, Governor.
Okay,
that would be an oversight committee.
An oversight. Okay, I missed that part somehow. I apologize.
Not a problem. Thank you. And let me particularly, Governor and others, thank 2 members of our staff who have worked tirelessly to put this together. Chris Cassidy, Charlie Woolman. And I also want to thank the rest of our in-house team that has worked on this fund. Vince, David Lee, Evan, Bruce Brown, Brent, and Carrie. All of you have put in tremendous effort, productive effort over the past 3 or 4 weeks to formulate a workable structure for the fund, as have the Office of the Governor and Sun Mountain Capital. The process of creating a fund of this type, literally out of whole cloth, has been somewhat of a monumental undertaking. We, your staff, believe the fund structure being recommended today takes into account council suggestions for improvement, and that this is worthy of your consideration and approval. Thank you, Governor, and if we may hear from Brian Burke and Lee Rand to fill in some of the blanks, that would be appreciated.
Without objection, absolutely, proceed.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Madam Governor, and also council members for your time this morning. What I'd like to do is make a few summary level comments to highlight some of the key items that have changed, and to also answer any questions that you might have. Complete details were included in the package that was circulated along with the meeting notice. I think it's important that just to follow on with one of Steve's comments. We have received through staff and directly a number of comments, suggestions, and really a strive for clarification regarding the purpose and some of the items in the fund. And I think that has been very helpful in finalizing the details and presenting a package for your consideration this morning. And now let me turn to some of the summary level comments. The purpose of the fund is to provide differential rate loans to a broad range of New Mexico businesses that have been directly affected by the COVID-19 virus. These loans under this program will be structured to provide liquidity and flexibility to New Mexico businesses, allowing them to retain a majority of employees and to tailor the terms to minimize the cash needs early on right when the cash crunch is at its most severe, and to be able to refinance or repay these loans without any penalty if business conditions should improve. Secondly, we have lowered the company size to really think about medium-sized businesses in the state. Minimum employee number is now around 40. And correspondingly, we have lowered the loan sizes to reflect companies of that size. In addition, consistent with this clear purpose, the loan rates have been lowered as well. Rates are now for companies that are qualified and with appropriate collateral packages, rates can be as low as 3% and will go up from there based on a set of factors regarding the company and its creditworthiness. We have also included, for the recipients of these loans, a set of affirmative covenants that talk about the use of this money for retaining employees, for the use of the loan proceeds to be to support the employment base and not to pay dividends or other uses of the capital. And finally, to put on certain limits on executive compensation and bonuses, such that they do not exceed pre-pandemic levels, to ensure, again, that this money is used as intended. We have also cut the Sun Mountain Capital fees associated with managing this program. Those fees are now less than 1/2 of the fees that we charge on our other credit product or other credit fund that we manage. In addition, we have eliminated any carry or preferred return, keeping in the spirit of a program of this nature. In addition, we have agreed to the establishment of an independent oversight committee. The oversight committee can help monitor this fund to make sure that it's working as intended, and also will approve certain investments that come in front of it. Finally,
Brian, would you elaborate just a little bit on that approval of investments, because that is not a broad approval mechanism?
No. The way that we envision this is, and this speaks directly to the potential for a conflict of interest here in the fund, that no member of Sun Mountain Capital or any of its affiliates, no member of the State Investment Council or any of their affiliates, and no mention of State Investment Council staff, no companies affiliated with any of those people will be eligible for funding. However, there is a case where there are companies that are in the Sun Mountain Capital co-investment loan portfolio or are indirectly related to Sun Mountain Capital through being part of the Catalyst Fund portfolio. Companies who the decision will be made by the oversight committee whether to extend a loan or not. The decision will not be made by Sun Mountain Capital, and thus sidestepping potential conflicts of interest.
Thank you, Brian. And neither the investment staff nor the oversight committee will otherwise have any credit approval responsibilities.
Correct. Finally, given, as Steve said, this is somewhat of a unique program, we have structured it in a way that that should this program not be achieving its target, that there is a way to actually stop the program and to redeploy the capital in other areas that it might be deployed. I think those are a summary of the major changes to the program. One item I just wanted to add was that we have the program from soup to nuts, ready to go as soon as we have the legal documents signed. So we believe that would be in a week or potentially less, depending on how fast those documents come together. And with that, thank you for your time, and Lee and I would be happy to answer any additional questions there might be.
Thank you. This is the governor. Steve, is there anything else that you want to point out or discuss before we take questions from committee members?
Governor, just one more point. Thank you,
Mhm.
Governor. Just one more point, if I may. After we get the legal documents signed, I think the feeling is, Brian and Lee, that we could begin to make loans as early as the last week of April and possibly as late as the first week of May. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, thank you very much. All right, questions, comments, concerns from council members?
This is Linda Eisen. I have 3 questions, but first of all, I really want to commend everybody on putting together this fund. That really reflects the professionalism of everybody to put this unique thing together so quickly. I think you have balanced well the details and requirements for the loans versus the flexibility needed during these uncertain times for the loans. You've done just a terrific job. I'll give you all 3 questions. That way it'll be easier for you to just answer them rather than back and forth. The first is, will the interest and payment of the loans, payoff of the loans, be redeployed in the fund or be distributed to us as limited partners? The second question is, what is the term of the fund? And the third question is, are you anticipating other investors in the fund? And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Member Eidson. This is Brian Burke. I'll field those. Regarding your first question, as we receive capital, interest and principal payments back to the fund, those will be distributed back to the limited partner. There's no plan on redeploying those at this time, given our belief that this is an immediate short-term need, and so given the purpose of it, redeployment doesn't really make sense. The term itself, we envision
excuse me, Brian, this is Steve. Just for everyone's information, the limited partner is the State Investment Council, and we are the only limited partner in the fund.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Regarding the term has been shortened to a 5-year term. That's 1 year for an investment period and 4 years for what we call the harvest period for these loans. So 5 years total. And finally, given the speed at which this fund is moving, we don't anticipate an ability to recruit other potential limited partners in the fund. That may change, and the documents have been drafted to leave that door open, but we do not anticipate that being the case.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Governor,
Thank
this
you.
Governor, this is Mike Messina. If I could ask a question. Thank you, Governor. I know there are extensive covenants, financial and otherwise, and I'm just wondering 2 things about that. One, what is the enforcement mechanism if there are violations of the covenant? And 2, what mechanism or approach do you have to differentiate between non-substantial and more substantial violations of those covenants?
Yeah, thank you, Member Messina. There are extensive covenants associated with this program. The financial covenants are typical for loans of this nature. And most of these companies, given they have existing banking relationships, we believe will be familiar with that reporting, that level of detail in the reporting. There are also, in addition, as you mentioned, there are other covenants regarding employment levels and whatnot. Our mechanism for enforcing will be quarterly reporting basis and certification by the company officers as to the accuracy of the data, and the ability to cross-check that with Workforce Solutions to ensure that, to spot check that to ensure that the data reported is consistent with what is carried on the Workforce Solutions books. The way to differentiate a substantial breach of the covenants and an unsubstantial, I think, would be based on the regular reporting mechanisms that we would have in place, both the financial reporting and the management update calls. I think we would regard any substantial breach as one that jeopardizes the business or jeopardizes the health of the business in such a way that it might impinge on the ability to repay the loan. Or if we believe that the use of proceeds are inconsistent with the nature of this loan, either being used for other purposes rather than employment retention, we would consider those substantial breaches.
All right, thank you. Any follow-up questions, Member Messina?
Yeah, I just want to know what happens. What do you think would happen when there is a substantial breach? Does that mean you would call the loan, or do you know?
We would take all efforts to not recall the loan, given the nature of the program.
I think that Member Messina might be, are there penalties? And I should know the answer to this as well. So I actually appreciate that the effort is to put businesses back on the right track, give them the flexibility to do that. This investment is intended to help New Mexico's small business economy recover and that ecosystem. But there are normal aspects where we're not trying to recall the loan and put everyone in default. But if they aren't meeting the terms, that there are maybe a couple of examples of things that could occur in the event that we have a businesses who can't meet the terms of the loan.
Madam Governor, that is correct. There are, like there would be in any financial loan, there are penalties in the event of default that would kick in should the company default, that fall well short of actually recalling the loan and potentially jeopardizing the business. For example, some of those penalties could include an increase in interest rate, include a restructuring of the debt. It could include a restriction on cash being used for other purposes, be that acquisition of assets or disposition of assets. There are a set of actions that we could take that would help ensure that loan is repaid, short of actually recalling the loan and potentially shutting down the business.
Thank you. Member Messina, is that enough information?
Yes, thank you, Governor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Other questions?
This is Lee. I always have some.
All right, Senator, that's, I take that as a compliment to your participation on the council. Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate Sun Mountain reducing their rates and taking that into consideration. And as Steve mentioned earlier, all the changes, I do appreciate that and what you said, Governor. But I'm confused or would need a little explanation, if I can, on three areas. One is the tiers. I didn't know how that would work. Then in your narrative, you mentioned a minute ago about redeploying if the fund didn't work or wasn't meeting the target. I didn't see where that was in the document. And then I just wondered if these would be recourse loans and we would be requiring any sort of personal guarantee, or if there's anything that we need to cover from the standpoint, and this may be an Evan question, from the standpoint of being constitutional, so we're not giving money away to citizens.
Great. Thank you for your questions, Councilmember Rawson. If I might, let me start with the first one, and I'll work my way through the list. Regarding the tiers, you know, we have a scoring process that we use to assess the candidacy of any applicant. And that scoring process utilizes a set of factors, financial and management team, qualitative oriented, to identify a score. Think about it almost like a credit score. And we are basically establishing rates based on what that credit score might look like. We have, in order to provide financing to as broad a group of New Mexico businesses as possible, we realize that we can't give everyone a 3% rate because not everyone is as qualified as other people. And however, we don't want to charge those very qualified companies a higher rate when that seems, when they are more qualified. So our approach to tiering enables us to potentially provide loans to a much greater set of New Mexico businesses than if we had used a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. Regarding the redeployment, in the legal documents and with the help of the Oversight Committee and the SIO staff, there will be an opportunity for, or the ability for the State Investment Office. If this program, for example, if we don't have a lot of applicants for loans, if at the end of a 6 months time, we've only deployed a small percentage of the capital, then the State Investment Office has the ability to cut the program short and utilize whatever capital has not been deployed to redeploy that into other areas. And that's something that is mentioned in the documents, but will be spelled out in more detail in the legal documents.
Brian, this is Steve. If I may just use the word restructure, restructuring the fund to make it operate in different ways than it was originally set up. That's the intent there.
Yes.
All right, Senator
Well,
Wilson, do you have any? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, my only thought on that is I would hope if it was significantly modified that the council would have an opportunity to weigh in at that point, at least be aware of what's going on. Then there's two places, and I don't know if that concern me that I thought might be worth amending if we needed to. And one is that to maximize this at the 1 year investment period, but that might go directly against what you're talking about if we have to modify it. But I think that's the goal, is that if we can't invest the money in the first year or deploy it within the first year, we really don't want to be appointed 2 and 3 years later out. So I didn't know if we needed to minimize that. And then also on page 10, it talks about 80% being spent in New Mexico. And I would feel a lot better about that being 100%. I mean, because it's really hard to justify that to, fiduciary. As Linda mentioned during the last discussion, we've got a fiduciary responsibility. And when we're trying to help the economy, it needs to be first New Mexico. So I would prefer to see 100% in that. And so if there was a mood for that, I'd sure like to see that amended. And that's the end of my comments.
Well, Councilmember Austin, the 80% threshold was there because, as you can appreciate, many of these larger companies, even though they're headquartered here and the vast majority of their employees here, they have employees in other areas as well, Salesforce or marketing team or whatever it might be. And we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for as many New Mexico businesses as possible to apply for this assistance.
And Governor, if I may just add briefly to what Lee was asking. Lee was questioning whether there is recourse, Brian, personal guarantees, et cetera.
Correct. Yeah, we do not. We would, Councilmember Rawson raises a good point, and we will circle back with Evan to ensure that that whatever we do is compliant. Our belief and our modus operandi is that given the substantial size of these businesses, 40 plus employees and millions of dollars in revenue typically, that a personal guarantee would not be required. But we will circle back with Evan to ensure that is consistent with whatever statutory requirement is in place.
And Governor, I think it's important to make clear for all of those on the call that these are not grants, and there is no forgiveness of debt mechanism associated with this fund. Thank you.
Steve, that was, excuse me, I'm sorry, Governor, but that was one of my thoughts earlier, is whether or not we needed to make that clear in the document so that that wouldn't be confused with the federal program.
This is Tim, and I agree with Lee. I think there clearly needs to be something in there, but it's not, there's no forgiveness of debt. I think we have that obligation of the permanent funds.
That's something, this is Lee, member. That's definitely something that'll be very clear in the legal loan docs for the company, but if it's something that needs to be clarified, it could be done.
Yeah, we're happy to make that clear because it is important.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I think the interest rate is reasonable. I mean, it's a lot better than what the projections were earlier. So I'd say Sun Mountain did a good job on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Agreed, and I might just have a small comment related to a statement by Senator Rawson. It's hard to know what's going to happen this whole next year. It's really hard to know what additional efforts the feds will make or not make. And it's going to be really hard to figure out which companies, based on how we open up the economy again, can bounce back and which companies aren't going to be able to do that. And so having it all done in a year and all out, I worry about that because it's going to take, this is an example. Some companies have been restricted, but are completely closed. And as they kind of figure that out, we've been doing a ton of negotiation with auto dealers. And the whole point was to try to, in our closure, is to keep people from showing up in groups of 40 shopping. And it was really hard. We tried 4 or 5 different ways to do that, and none of them worked. People kept going. And so we have sales open and online sales, but you can't go today. You can't go to a used or new auto dealer. And so while the used car folks certainly fit that small New Mexico business really trying to figure it out, they're also in rural areas. They're trying to maintain their staffing and payroll. Some are on commission, some aren't. Some are salaried individuals. So it's tricky to figure out how that's going to work. And I think a little more flexibility. We're all trying to understand what impacts on any number of business sectors. And there were so many emerging small businesses in high tech and innovation, and in tourism, and any number of areas, even in renewable energy, that got stalled as a result of COVID-19. And I just think we want to give ourselves a little room here. And I appreciate that this fund attempts to do that. without being open-ended forever.
Governor, this is Lee. Just a follow-up question on that. Are you perceiving, as we proceed through this pandemic, that there'll be a gradual release of certain sectors, or are you seeing it more as just a total release at one time?
Senator, I wish I knew. I think most of the states, including ours, are looking at kind of a gradual aspect, but it really depends on what we learn across the country and right here in the next 3 weeks. I am equally concerned, first, and I know this isn't for me to be on a soapbox, but saving lives, protecting healthcare workers and first responders, making sure our hospital systems don't collapse. But we have to get the economy moving again, and we have to be mindful that there's a recovery plan. So we're working on a recovery plan right now and sort of figuring out those scenarios. If I had to guess, based on what I know today, you'd sort of open it up in sectors, but I don't have the answer. It would be easier if we learned that this virus, that we can figure out a way by testing antibodies, who's had it, who's potentially immune, and open everything wide up and make sure that we have the ability to do that kind of surveillance. I'm not sure in 3 weeks the country will be there, but we're trying to get there. So everything's on the table. And separate to the meeting, anybody who's got ideas about how we can do that safely, our office, and John's on the call, we're interested in every single idea, every single one. And thank you for giving me a chance to talk about that a little. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, well, I hope that Senator Rawson, we were able to answer your question. I would actually hope that we would have a motion without amendment. I think the work that we asked the staff and Sun Mountain Capital to do, they did, and they were very effective and timely. I think this can be a real benefit, and it shows that we're looking at any number of ways to build our economy, to save our businesses, and to protect these funds in a reasonable, productive, ethical, and appropriate fiduciary related manner. And I think that we've struck all of those balances, and I'm really pleased with this effort, and I would entertain a motion to approve.
Governor, this is Harold Lavender. I move that we place the motion that's in the documentation for approval.
All right. Do we have a second?
I second. It's Peter Frank.
Thank you, Member Frank. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Governor, this is
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Maybe you better have a roll call.
Yeah, Governor.
Is that Carrie?
Yeah, this is Carrie. Excuse me. Just so that we've been advised that I probably should do a roll call vote,
Okay.
so I'm clear on everyone's vote on this matter.
All right, that's fine. I'm sorry. I should have let you recommend that and move us towards a roll call vote. I apologize. I apologize to the council. Please proceed, Carrie.
All right, so we have a motion by Harold Lavender and a second by Peter Frank, and I will now take the roll call. Governor Lujan Grisham.
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Richard.
Yes.
Secretary Padilla Jackson.
Yes.
Peter Frank.
Yes.
Linda Eisen.
Yes.
Harold Lavender.
Yes.
B. Rawson.
Yes.
Tim Jennings.
Yes.
Michael Messina.
Yes.
And Nicholas Hayes.
Yeah.
You have unanimous approval, Governor.
Thank you, and thank you, members and everyone. I think this is really an exciting proposal and makes clear that we all want to make sure that we do everything we have the power to do to bolster, support, and protect not just our small businesses, but our fragile, unfortunately, New Mexico economy. So we're now on item 3 of the agenda, which is a new or old business. Does anyone have any new or old business that we need to raise on this particular meeting and call? All right, seeing none, we're on the next item.
This is Stephanie Garcia Richard.
Go ahead, Vice Chairwoman.
I just wanted to alert everyone, you probably saw the press release that the land office is undergoing emergency rulemaking right now to give the elective option for oil and gas companies to shut in their wells and retain their leases for a nominal fee. And so if anyone has questions on that, I'm willing to take them on or off this call. I also wanted, at the risk of sounding sycophantic, Governor, I wanted to take this time in this public setting just to thank you for your leadership in this time of crisis, and just to let you know how good it is to see you at the wheel, and so communicative and professional and knowledgeable, and you and your team, the secretaries that have given the public notices. So that's all I have.
Well, on the latter, thank you very much. That's very kind. It's tough for the whole country, and it's tough here. And we spend 24 hours a day, it seems like, both trying to figure it out and make New Mexico safe and do the very best we can with those balances, and they're tough. So that was very kind of you. Thank you. Does anybody have a question for Commissioner Garcia Richards? Okay. I appreciate that, you raising that to our attention. With that, I'm going to go to the next section for 3, which is reminding folks that we've got a State Investment Council meeting on April 28th. Did I get that right, everyone?
That's correct.
Yep, at 9 a.m. Right. And given what I know today, I would assume that we would be managing that on the phone call to Commissioner Garcia Richards' point. We think our apex and surge happens at the end of April, first part of May. We'll keep modeling that and adjusting that based on our rate of increase or decrease or flattening for COVID-19. So thank you for that. All right. We're now at the item or component of the meeting, which is public comment. Do we have anyone who is able to join the phone call and has anything that they'd like to add?
Charlie?
Governor, this is Charles Wallman. We did take public comment. I have 2 short comments that I can relate.
Okay.
I'm going to go read those out very briefly. First one comes from Dan Pritchard of Renewable Taos. He says, thank you for supporting locally financed renewable energy in New Mexico. This is critical to our recovery and reducing our dependence on oil and gas revenues. I know these revenues will always be needed, but to meet the mandates of the Energy Transition Act, all resources we can muster are needed. I look forward to the development and release of the State Investment Office report on renewable investment as requested by House Memorial 9, Renewable Energy Investment Strategic Plan. Insights to its development would be useful to the general public. The second comment I have comes from Kenneth Segura Knoll. He says, it seems somewhat after the fact process to have public comment at the end of the meeting, especially when you have a one topic matter. After a survey of 1,500 businesses, New Mexico's small businesses, between 30 and 40% are telling us they will be closing for good. We have identified 3 restaurants, including the Cooperage in Albuquerque, and a hardware store will have already decided to close for good. These businesses can be saved. It will take equity participation with old owners or new owners, possibly employees. With 157,000 small businesses, 30% means 45,000 businesses closing. With an average of 6 employees, you're looking at 270,000 people out of work. I encourage SIC to work with private equity funds to mitigate the problem. Please don't small businesses out of the lifeboat. Governor, that is the end of public comments today.
Thank you, Shirley. Does anybody have any reactions to those on this particular call? I know we typically don't do that and make sure that they're in the records, so we're clear about thinking about them and responding in any number of ways through the staff and other folks, but just making sure. Okay.
Governor.
All right. I'm sorry.
Well, this is Lee. I just wondered who the second comment was attributed to again.
Kenneth?
Lee, Senator Rawson, the second one is Kenneth Segura Noel.
Out of where? Do we know?
I believe he's in Albuquerque. He is he often attends our meetings and makes public comment.
Yeah.
Okay, I know who you have. Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, do I have a motion? The next item is to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Pam.
All right, a second?
Lee.
All right, so I've got a motion to adjourn by Senator Jennings and a second by Senator Rawson. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Hearing none, that motion carries. Have a safe April and safe Easter week. Please don't go anywhere where there's more than 5 individuals. And this is a great place for me to let everyone on this call know that we're a state that didn't have to order religious organizations to shutter. They're doing it on their own, but for maybe 3 churches, which I'm working on, I'm feeling incredibly confident that nobody holds an in-person service. They're all online. Even the Catholic Church is doing some interesting stuff where people can drive by, see the priest and pay their respects and really get the family dressed up and get in the car, and then they go home. And for Holy Week, we're putting out information through the faith-based community that we can be holy, home is holy. So thank you for that. Be safe, and thank you for all you're doing to help us minimize the impacts of COVID-19. I'm grateful. All right, have a great week. You too, Governor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.